Hi, I'm Andy and welcome to my channel about crypto. In today's video we'll look at Bitcoin and when it's likely that it will hit its new all-time high. So let's have a look at the chart. So in the last few days Bitcoin absolutely smashed past through the previous local peak, which was just under 53k, which is of course a very bullish sign. And if we zoom out, this basically means that our next target are those 4 peaks we had earlier this year. So if you look at the green dotted line here, we're actually not far off that first peak. That one was around 58 and a half thousand. And earlier today we actually hit roughly 57k level, so we are only about $1,500 or so away from going above this one. Then this peak is just under 60k or around 60k. This one is around 61, 62, and then of course previous all-time high just short of 65k. So these are essentially our next 4 targets now that we went above this peak here. And to be honest, from the current level, that's actually not far off. If we take a measurement here from current level to the previous all-time high, that's roughly 15%. So this move we had right here from the bottom or from the test of our bull market support band to the top of that wick, I mean that's around 40%, just shy of 40%. Which shows, and that move was essentially less than 2 weeks, and the last few days we've been going sideways, so basically majority of that movement was just over a week or so, and that gave us 40% increase in price. So another 15% is certainly very, very achievable. When is it likely to happen? Well, I think there's a very good chance that it may happen within the next couple of weeks, and there are multiple things pointing towards it. We can look, for example, at Plan B's model. If you don't follow him, check out his Twitter, 1 trillion USD. His model is quite interesting. I don't 100% agree with it, but I think there is a lot that's right with it, if that makes sense. And certainly it's been checking out so far this year. We had August above 47k, September above 43, and his target for October is 63k or above. That doesn't mean closing the month at that figure, but reaching that figure at some point during the month. Then November 98k and December 135. Now, the reason why I said I don't fully agree with it is because I think these last 2 figures are a little bit optimistic. I think they're perfectly achievable in this market cycle, but I don't necessarily expect them to happen this soon. I would expect that more in sort of February, March next year to achieve those figures. Certainly 135k or anything above 100k, I would expect that to be at some point next year, early next year. But so far, August and September checked out, and October, well, we are not far off 63k, and that's not far off previous all-time high. So it could work out. Then, like I said just a moment ago, I mean 65k is only about 15% move up from now, and as we've seen in the past, just in the last few days or in this period here or here or here, Bitcoin can quite comfortably move by 15% in a matter of a couple of days, easily. In fact, if we take measurement here, let's say this candle, and I'm measuring just bottom to top of the candle rather than the wick, although the wick was really short there. I mean, that's almost 10%. So 10% up from now would take us to around 63k level. So yeah, it's certainly very, very possible. And if we zoom out, I think what we are seeing here is quite interesting, because we had this pretty epic move up, like I said, around 40%. Actually, this one was around 35%, those first few candles. And now we've been experiencing a bit of sideways movement. Today has been actually pretty strong, but we'll see how it will go. I mean, as you can see, yesterday or a couple of days ago, we had similar, quite long wicks, but then actually the close was still roughly at the same level as the open. Today, so far, we seem to be performing a bit better. We were sitting around 55k for the last few days. Now we seem to be pushing more towards 56.5, 57k. But we'll see whether we'll keep that at the close of day. But essentially, last few days we're moving sideways after this pretty significant move up. Now, the last time it happened was, and there's one more important thing here, all of this is happening right after we had our test of the bull market support band, the 20-week SMA. So what happened last time when we were in a similar situation? So that's actually similar period last year. We had much longer test of the bull market support band in September and October, followed by slightly different thing that what we are seeing now. We had quite gradual long move up until December, basically, mid-December in fact. A lot of sideways movement, a couple of corrections, but very, very gradual move up. And then it's this part here that I'm interested in. So if I zoom into it, what we had here, those few candles, they represent, that's around 26%, or if you measure it from this one, I just switch the tool, that's around 35%. So basically these few candles here are similar to what we experienced at the beginning of October, that 40% move up. And then that was followed by this sideways movement for about a week or so, which is more or less what we're seeing right now. And of course, what happened afterwards was this move up. Now, this was a period from the 25th of December until 8th of January, so roughly 2 weeks. So if we measure this move up, that was 76%. And of course then we had correction. That was at the time new all-time high. Our previous all-time high was just below 20k, so somewhere around this level. So basically from this moment onwards we just smashed past it and well, doubled it, more than doubled it. And that's, like I said, not too dissimilar to what we are seeing right now. We had this move up, bit of a sideways movement. So you could say that we are primed for this move up right here. Now, if we move to today, let's zoom out a bit here. So if we try to measure from, well, roughly somewhere in the middle of the current level, 70% move up, 75%, 76, that would put us just shy of 100 grand, around 97,000. And as we've seen before, that's not unrealistic to expect that to happen over the next couple of weeks. Of course, the main difference here is actually that would go in line with Plan B's prediction for November. 98k. That's actually spot on, that level. Of course, the main difference between where we are now and what we've seen last year is that, well, previously we were starting from around 20k Bitcoin. Now we are at 56k. So there has to be far more money poured into Bitcoin to facilitate that move up. Bitcoin at the moment is above 1 trillion, around, just above 1 trillion. That sort of move up would require, can't bother to do the exact maths at the moment, but I think around $700 billion or so. With the current crypto market cap sitting just under 2.5 trillion. So of course that's a lot of money that would have to come to crypto, but it's not impossible. We've seen these kind of movements before, so that's certainly one possibility. Another one is, if we zoom out and go back to previous market cycle in 2017. So again, it's similar period. Previous all-time high, if I remember correctly, was around 5k. And again, we had something similar happening here. This move up after tests of 20-week SMA here and here. If I zoom in a bit more, okay, and let's measure that. That's roughly 40% move up here over those, well, I guess that's about a week and a half or so, followed by, if we take it from here, 14th October until this candle here, 29th October, so followed by roughly 2 weeks of sideways movement. Decent move up, followed by a bit of a correction, and then massive parabolic move up. To the extent we won't see in this market cycle, but that move up was very modest, 235%. Well, that's not going to happen this time for numerous reasons, but similar pattern as we've seen in 2020. Quite significant move up, bit of sideways movement, followed by a massive move up. The main difference here is that we had this slight peak first, and actually at the time that was quite considerable. I mean, that was from around 5,500 to close to 8,000. So it was quite decent move up, followed by a correction to that previous level, and then massive move up to the peak of the market cycle. So what I expect this time to happen is possibly a few more days of sideways movement, and then another leg up. However, I think that we'll see some resistance around these levels. So I wouldn't be surprised. Essentially, what I don't expect to happen is something like this, that we just go straight up. I wouldn't mind it, but I think it's highly unlikely. I think what's likely to happen next is that we'll see move up, we'll see a bit of resistance around those levels, so essentially 60 to 65k. I expect that we may struggle with that level a little bit, and then next leg up towards 75, 80k potentially later this year. That's my cautious, realistic expectation. But however you look at it, I think that new all-time high for Bitcoin is literally just around the corner. I would expect it to happen within the next 2 to 4 weeks. I'm not entirely sure if we'll go just above it or smash past it. To be honest, I what I think is likely to happen is that we will stall around that 60 to 65k level. And then what may happen next is what happened here. Eventually we'll just go past it, potentially to around 70, 75k. So I'm not entirely sure how it will pan out, but so I think it's possible that we may see something like this, just pretty much a parabolic move up towards 75k. What I think is more likely to happen is that we'll see something more like this. Rubbish drawing skills, but you get the point. Bit of resistance in that 60 to 65k range, and then pronounced move up. And like I said, I would expect these scenarios to play out in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So by mid-November, I think there is very, very good chance that we'll see new all-time high for Bitcoin. And I would expect that new all-time high to be by quite some margin, not just a couple of percent. Like I said, I think around 70, 75k is perfectly realistic. If we go by what I showed you earlier with repeating what we've done last year, or what Plan B's model suggests, well, potentially we can even approach 100k, but I would be very surprised if that happens. If it does happen, or if we see this kind of parabolic move up with very little sideways movement or very little corrections in between, we will see sooner or later a very sharp drop. I mean, if we go back, all those moves up, eventually, well, they had 25-30% corrections. If we go to say 75k, 25% correction from that level is what, about 18 grand or so, which would take us back from 75 to sort of high 50s, barely above the current level, which can be quite nasty. And if we see parabolic move up like this, I will be certainly taking some of the profits out, because I will be preparing for that correction. I don't expect it to be the end of the market cycle or the market peak. I still expect the cycle to go well into 2022, certainly at least the first quarter of 2022, and quite likely summer of 2022. But whenever we see this kind of move up, well, there is a dip coming afterwards. It's bound to happen. And I think, of course, how much profits you take out and whether you take out any profits at all, it depends on your particular situation, on tax obligations and so on. It has to be worth it. But I would be certainly looking at taking some of the profits out. And then, of course, largely reinvesting it either in Bitcoin once it dips, or in other coins. If we see a bit more of a sideways movement or smaller dips along the way, I will probably just ride it out. I don't think, if it's sort of plus minus 10% movement, I don't think it's worth the hassle. Essentially, if I'm not expecting 20 to 30% dip, I don't think it's worth taking out any profits, but we'll see how it will play out. So that's pretty much all regarding Bitcoin. ETH is going largely sideways at the moment. Oh, sorry. That's slightly longer scale. So, okay, ETH over the last few days been going sideways. If Bitcoin goes up, I think ETH will follow, but probably not necessarily at the same pace. ETH tends to perform best after Bitcoin hits its peak. So yeah, I expect ETH to follow, but somewhat slower than Bitcoin. And then ADA, well, that's just going sideways, and I expect it to go sideways for quite a while. If I change to a different exchange, which has a bit more price history for ADA, okay. So I think what we're seeing now here is not too dissimilar to what we've seen here, and then here, and somewhat similar to this phase here, essentially a long reaccumulation phase. Of course, the main difference is that these levels were, that was around $1.40, 50, that was around $1.20, that was around 30 cents. Now we are sitting around $2.20, but especially now after the release of smart contracts, I expect basically this to be a longer reaccumulation phase for ADA, and then eventually, of course, it will start going up. I still expect it to go up to $10 or potentially more, but I don't necessarily expect that movement to start anytime soon. So just to recap this video, the main point here is that Bitcoin had this amazing move up. Of course, it's possible that we'll see a bit of a correction, kind of what we've seen here, but personally I think it's more likely that we'll see a bit of sideways movement and then the next leg up towards new all-time high. And in either case, even if we have correction coming up soon and then we go up, I still expect that new all-time high to happen within the next 2 to 4 weeks. What we've seen in the last few days is that we seem to be holding that 55k level quite strongly. It wasn't just a sharp move up followed by an immediate drop. We are actually holding that level. So yeah, I think it's a good time for Bitcoin. I think new all-time high is coming very, very soon. But at the same time, I absolutely don't think that this will be the end of the market cycle. It's just essentially another stepping stone. So my targets for Bitcoin are around 75k within the next 2 to 4 weeks. Possibly high 80s or maybe even 90s before the end of the year. And then market peak around 120k, possibly towards 140, 150k at some point in maybe March next year. But of course, we'll keep looking at the situation every week, see how it changes and what's likely to happen. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you find those videos useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.